The church was silent, save for the soft rustle of lace and the stifled sobs of a bride standing alone at the altar. Clara Bennett, radiant in her ivory gown, clutched a bouquet of wilting roses, her eyes fixed on the empty aisle where her groom, James, should have walked hours ago. The guests had long since drifted away, their whispers of pity lingering like ghosts in the pews. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting golden streaks through the stained glass windows, but Clara's world felt as gray as the storm clouds gathering in her heart. She was 28, a small-town schoolteacher with a laugh that could light up a room, but today, that light had gone out. The man she'd loved for 3 years, the man who'd promised her forever, had vanished without a word. And then, from the back of the church, a stranger's voice broke the silence. "Ma'am, you don't deserve them tears." Clara turned, startled, to see a dust-covered cowboy leaning against the doorframe, his hat tipped low and his eyes kind but piercing. Clara's morning had begun with hope. She'd woken at dawn, her stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. Her mother, Ellen, had fussed over her curls, pinning them with a pearl comb that had been her grandmother's. "James is a lucky man," Ellen had said, her voice thick with pride. Clara had believed it, too. James, with his steady job at the bank and his quiet charm, had been her anchor after years of feeling like she was drifting. They'd planned a simple life: children, a house with a porch swing, Sunday dinners with family. The wedding was to be the start of it all, a modest ceremony in their hometown of Willow Creek, Nebraska. But as the hours ticked by and James didn't appear, Clara's hope crumbled. His phone went to voicemail. His brother, sent to check his apartment, found it empty. By noon, the truth settled in: James wasn't coming. The guests tried to comfort her. Her best friend, Maggie, held her hand, whispering, "You're enough, Clara. You've always been enough." But the words felt hollow. Clara's heart churned with questions. Why had he left? Was she not enough? Had she missed some sign? The pastor gently suggested she go home, but Clara couldn't move. Leaving the church felt like admitting defeat, like letting go of the dream she'd built. So she stayed, alone, until the cowboy appeared. His name was Luke Harper, a drifter passing through Willow Creek on his way to a ranch job in Montana. He'd stopped at the church to water his horse, drawn by the sight of a bride sitting alone on the steps, her face buried in her hands. Luke was no stranger to heartbreak. He'd lost his wife, Sarah, to illness 5 years earlier, and since then, he'd wandered, keeping his grief at arm's length. But something about Clara's tears stirred him. He couldn't walk away. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the pew beside her. Clara, too numb to protest, nodded. Luke didn't pry. Instead, he told her stories about the open plains, the stars over Wyoming, the time his horse, Daisy, outran a thunderstorm. His voice was warm, steady, like a campfire on a cold night. Clara found herself listening, her tears slowing. "Why are you here?" she finally asked, her voice raw. Luke shrugged. "Reckon I've learned you don't pass by someone huttin' without tryin' to help." He paused, then added, "You're still you, ma'am. Ain't no man can take that." Over the next hour, Clara poured out her story. She told Luke about James's proposal under the oak tree by the river, about the late-night talks where they'd planned their future. She admitted her fear that she'd never be enough for anyone. Luke listened, his eyes never leaving hers. "Sounds like James didn't know what he had," he said softly. "But you don't need him to know who you are." His words, simple as they were, cracked something open in Clara. For the first time that day, she felt seen, but the story didn't end there. As Luke helped Clara gather her things, Maggie burst into the church, her face pale. "Clara, it's James. He's at the hospital." Clara's heart lurched. Luke offered to drive her, and she accepted, too shaken to think clearly. At the hospital, they learned the truth: James hadn't abandoned her. He'd been in a car accident that morning, swerving to avoid a deer. He was unconscious, with a broken leg and a concussion, but alive. Clara sat by his bedside, relief warring with anger and confusion. Why hadn't he called? Why had his phone been off? The answers would come later. His phone had died, and he'd been alone on a back road, but in that moment, Clara felt the weight of her own assumptions. Luke stayed until Clara's family arrived, then tipped his hat and slipped out. Clara barely noticed, her focus on James. But over the next weeks, as James recovered and their wedding was rescheduled, Clara couldn't shake Luke's words, "You're still you." She began to question her relationship with James. His accident had been a fluke, but his silence before it hadn't. He'd been distant for months, brushing off her concerns, and Clara realized she'd been shrinking herself to fit his expectations. She loved him, but she wasn't sure she loved who she became with him. One evening, Clara drove to the edge of town, where Luke was camped before heading to Montana. She found him by a fire, strumming a guitar. "I needed to thank you," she said, sitting across from him. "You reminded me I'm more than someone's bride." Luke smiled, his eyes crinkling. "You were always more than that, Clara." They talked until midnight, not about love or weddings, but about dreams, Clara's wish to travel, to write stories, to live bigger than Willow Creek. Luke shared his own hopes, how he wanted to settle someday, maybe build a ranch where kids could learn to ride. For the first time, Clara felt like her future wasn't tied to someone else. Clara didn't leave James right away. She gave him a chance, but by spring, she knew. She called off the wedding, this time on her terms. James was hurt, but he admitted he'd been unsure, too. They parted with grace, not anger. Clara took a leap. She applied for a teaching job in Colorado, closer to the mountains she'd always wanted to see. Before she left Willow Creek, she wrote Luke a letter, care of the Montana ranch. "You showed me how to be brave," she wrote. "I hope you find your home." Months later, Clara stood on a Colorado trail, her boots dusty, her heart full. She'd started writing again, her stories filling notebooks. She didn't know if Luke got her letter, but she carried his kindness with her. Back in Montana, Luke read her words by lamplight, a smile tugging at his lips. He didn't write back, not yet, but he kept the letter, a reminder that sometimes, helping a stranger could heal a piece of your own heart. And to you, watching this story unfold, know this: Clara's tears weren't the end. They were the beginning. Life's detours, heartbreakers, strangers, moments of doubt, can lead you to yourself. You are enough, just as you are. So take a step, even if it's small. Your story isn't over. It's just waiting for you to write the next page.